Welcome back, everyone. So today I want to talk about this thing that ScreamStream did, which consists of Lee McCoy, Drum Dums, Cody Leach, CP Will I Like It Reviews, Brian Lomax, and Mother Mayhem. Now, they did a list of 31 on 31. This is a list of films from the Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween franchise, all bunched together, all 31 movies on October 31st. And I thought that was such a cool idea, and I love all of them so much, like watching their videos, especially their ScreamStreams. They're so fun. They really do like work well together, all of them together in their ScreamStreams, and I really enjoy all of them, and I thought I might as well go and do this list like as a response to how much I love watching them. And I really appreciate that they did this. Like, it's so cool. It's such a cool idea. So I wanted to, out of respect, like, give my thoughts, even though they probably won't ever watch this, but I still want to do that. I still want to say, like, what do I think of, like, all these films together? Like, how would I rank them? And this was damn hard. This was an interesting thing to do because out of all of them, I'd say I'm less of a Nightmare fan, even though I enjoy a lot of them, and I love the original Halloween, which, spoiler, is my number one, obviously. But the other, like Friday the 13th, I love as well, so it was really hard to do this, like really hard to rank these. But nevertheless, here we go. My number 31 would be Jason X, and this one to me is just, honestly, it's just boring. It's the least interesting overall. Like, it's the one that I just don't care for in any way, shape, or form. Besides that one kill with the cryo freeze and the head smash, that's it. Like, there's nothing else that gave me anything that made me want to. I'd never really want to rewatch this one ever out of all of them. And even the next one that I'm going to talk about, which is awful, I can watch that over this one. So Jason X is my least favorite because of that. It's just a really forgettable dud that's really stupid in a way where I don't ever enjoy it. Even though there are fans, people enjoy this movie. That's totally fine, but I don't enjoy this one that much. And then my number 30 would be Halloween Resurrection. Now, this one is insulting in so many ways. Like, everybody's talked about the obvious thing, like killing Jamie Lee Curtis, doing that retcon of Halloween H2O, and how he came into this movie and he just killed her off in 15 minutes. It's so stupid, so awful. And then Busta Rhymes leads the rest of the group with these awful and likable characters. But there's a couple positives. I think that the Michael mask is totally fine. I think that the final girl is alright. I think that the score is honestly pretty good. And the kills are fine too. So it's not awful, like the worst thing ever, but it's pretty fucking bad. It's pretty bad in a lot of ways. Like, I can't stand this movie for the most part, but I can watch it. So Halloween Resurrection is my number 30. And then, here we go with the controversy. My number 29 would be Friday the 13th, the remake. Now, this one, besides the fact that Jason is badass and brutal, I don't care for this movie in any way, shape, or form, really. I think this one is not good, really, at all. Besides the brutal kills and the brutality of Jason, everything else is insufferable to me. I don't think anybody really is interesting or likable. Besides Clay, who's just okay. He's not awful, but he's not super likable. Like, he's just there. Like, you kind of feel bad for him, but I don't know. Like, he didn't have the charm like all these other characters in the original ones, to me at least. So Friday the 13th, the remake, is my number 29. And then number 28 is another Friday movie. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, this one people would put at the bottom of their list a lot of the time, and I agree in a lot of aspects. This one I feel like is a tad more watchable than Jason X, even though it's still pretty awful. Like, this one's pretty bad. But I appreciate the fact that this has the Friday look to it. Like, it looks like the first 8 films. It's just not as good as the first 6 or even 7, so it really didn't do much for me. And I've seen it dozens of times, and every single time I forget about it easily. It's really forgettable. So I really thought that Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan is just really a forgettable mess. And again, it's the obvious thing, like, oh, it should have been more in New York. Yes, it should have, but they were just too big to their britches for trying to make a movie like this, and they didn't have the budget for it anymore. Maybe if they did like the first 4 movies, then maybe it would have worked, but it was getting less income back for these movies at this time, and Part 8 was so didn't fail at the box office, I think, but it didn't make enough to where they had to sell it to New Line, to sell Jason a New Line. So yeah, this one is another dud again, just not very watchable again. So my 28 is Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake. Or sorry, number 27. Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Now, the remake to me for Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, is a tad better than the Friday the 13th one. I think it's more visually pleasing, but it's still got some awful things, like how, like, Rooney Mara in this movie. I feel terrible for Rooney Mara, but she is awful in this movie, and well, she's awful for the first, like, half. And then after that, she's a tad better, but she doesn't change her acting doesn't change as much. It's still pretty bad and pretty annoying. And Jackie Earle Haley, I feel like isn't awful, but he isn't like the worst, like, contender for Freddy ever. I think he makes sense in being Freddy. So I didn't dislike Freddy in this one, like, as much as people say. Like, I don't think he's the worst, and I feel like people shouldn't shit on him. He can't replicate Robert Englund. Of course, he's not Robert Englund. It's just like Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. He's good, but he's not Harrison Ford. But he's not bad either. It's just you can't replicate an actor, really. You can do impressions, but it's not the same. Even though Alden Ehrenreich is great as Han Solo, but it's just not the same, you know? So, I don't know, he shouldn't get shit on as much, so this one I feel like is a little better. It's got awful things about it, but it's got some cool things about it. It being closer to the original, I feel like gave it a little bit in its favor. So I thought this was a little more interesting than the Friday remake, because I just didn't like any of the characters in the Friday remake, really, and this one I liked a couple as the movie went on, because like I said, Rooney Mara isn't as good in the first half, like she's pretty awful, and then she gets a little bit better. So yeah, that is why this is my next pick. And my number 26 would be Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now, Freddy's Dead is one that is really, like, I can see why people think this is the worst in the franchise. I can definitely see that. But to me, this one is, I don't know, it's so insanely watchable, and it's so more interesting than the remake or than a lot of the Friday movies I already mentioned, like Jason X and Part 8. Like, this is way more watchable and way more interesting. Even though people hate this movie, I don't care. I think that it's way more watchable, way more interesting. Robert Englund, despite being silly, is way more entertaining to watch than boring-ass Friday 8 or Jason X or being insulted by Halloween Resurrection. It's like, you look at how he's got a personality and a charm to him still. I still enjoy Robert Englund in this movie a lot, and I liked how they went into Freddy's backstory. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was fun. I liked that a lot. So I don't hate this movie at all. I don't think this is one of the worst horror movies ever. I think it's tonally a different movie. It's not really a horror movie. It's like Seed of Chucky, where it's like, you look at it like, this is not supposed to be horror, but people get so pissed about it, so it's like, I guess, like, I can get why people don't like it, but I think it's way more watchable than the ones I already mentioned, and way more interesting. So I enjoy Freddy's Dead for what it is. And then my number 25 would be A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Now, Dream Child to me is not, like, it's definitely one of the more forgettable ones. Like, Freddy's Dead, I guess is worse, and it's entertaining, but this one, I still liked Alice in this movie. I thought she was a good final girl. I thought some of the kills were good. I thought it was fun overall, but it just, I don't know, like, it lacked what the first four had. It, like, didn't have as much, it wasn't as interesting. It felt like it was the moment where the franchise started to go stale and boring, and I thought the first four were great, and even though Alice is in this, she's a saving grace, it still is boring, even though it has some good kills and a good main lead, but it just was kind of boring overall. So Part 5 is my number 24. And my number 23 is Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. And this one, visually speaking, is one of the coolest movies on this list. Out of all these movies, this is one of the most visually cool with the cinematography. The cinematography is incredible. I love the cinematography in this movie. I love Michael Myers. George P. Wilbur is great in this movie. Everything else is just eh. Like, Paul Rudd is doing a weird-ass performance. All these other characters are there. They're fodder. They're kind of boring. They're not very interesting. But I did like them for the most part. So that's why this is one of my least favorite Halloween movies. But I don't know. Like, besides the cinematography and Myers, it's more... I don't know. It just felt like it lacked the characters, and I know people are saying, what the fuck did you put that under 5? So let's talk about my number 24, which is Halloween 5. Halloween 5 is one of those sequels where it's got a lot of bad things about it, but it's got a lot of good things about it. The laundry chute scene, the final act, is fantastic. I actually really like Tina. I think that she's one of those characters where you start out with her really annoying. She's got the Jar Jar syndrome where you see her for the first time and she's at her most annoying and most obnoxious, and it sticks with you the whole movie like a bad smell. She sticks with you in a horrible way. But as she goes along, even though it should have been Rachel, she was a likable final girl, and I thought that whenever she had her emotional moments with Jamie, I thought that it actually was really emotional, even though it should have been Rachel, and Rachel shouldn't have been killed off. It should have been Rachel, but the moments between her and Tina, whenever Jamie's like crying for her, like she doesn't want her to go out, she knows that something's gonna happen, like she knows something horrible's gonna happen tonight, like Michael's gonna kill her, but like Tina doesn't even think about it. I think those moments are great. I think the kills are fine. Michael uses a lot of cool weapons in this movie as opposed to the other ones. I think that's cool and that's fun. It's something to point out. So I enjoy 5 for what it is as well. Now, my number 23 is Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Now, again, controversy, because I put this over Part 8 and Jason X. Now, Jason X and Part 8 are more boring, and this one, I think, is ballsy. It has the balls to do something different. And they had to, because they got the rights for a new line after Part 8, but then it wasn't even technically... They didn't have the full rights. They couldn't call it Friday the 13th. They had Jason Voorhees, but not Friday the 13th, which is a stupid legal issue that I don't understand how the fuck that works. But that's so stupid. But anyway, this one is ballsy. This one is interesting. It has great kills. I thought these characters were honestly really serviceable and fine. I thought they were okay. They were way better than Part 8. Part 8 had awful acting in it. Like some of the worst in the franchise. So did Jason X, but this one had more likable characters with better performances. That one kill where the girl and the guy are having sex, and Jason possesses that one guy sticks a sign pole through this girl and rips her in half, and she just rips in half while they're having sex. That's one of the best kills in the franchise. I love that scene. But that's such an awesome scene and such an incredible kill. So I love things about this movie. It's not perfect at all. It's definitely not. But it's definitely one of the most underrated in the franchise, and I think it deserves way more than what it got. And my number 22 is Rob Zombie's Halloween. Now, both of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies are really, really interesting because... They have so many things I love and I hate about these movies. I hate the dialogue. The dialogue is so awful in this one. So awful. And apparently, watching Derek from Derek's Horror Corner, go check out his channel, he did a review on the theatrical and director's cuts versus on his channel, and he talked about how there's a lot of vulgar dialogue taken out of the theatrical cuts, because I've only seen the director's cuts, I think, because the box set I have, the big glossy box set of all the movies, it has only the director's cut, which is stupid. That put out the Halloween 6 director's cut and the Halloween 2 TV cut. Why didn't you have the theatrical cuts for Rob Zombie's movies? Why? I don't know why they didn't put that in the box set. That would have made it even better, but they didn't. So I'm basing it on the director's cut, the director's cuts of both movies. But in this version, in this first Rob Zombie Halloween, there are so many over-the-top, silly, overly stupid lines where it's so cruel, but in a way where it's overly cartoonish and stupid, where it's just, I understand what Rob Zombie's going for. He's going for this brutality of, like, Michael becoming a killer because of his awful redneck family, but, like, they are so insufferably stupid and annoying and just over the top, and it's just so awful in a lot of ways. But the brutality, the kills are incredible, the cinematography is great. I like Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie in the first one. So overall, this one is one that I do enjoy, but it's just not one that I don't know, like, it's a very love and hate it movie. So that's why it's definitely in the middle of all, kind of in the middle of all these rankings. And then my number 20 would be Halloween 2. Funny, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Now, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, people keep saying this, it's a love it or hate it movie. It definitely is. I can see why people love it. I can see why people hate it. I love this movie. And I'm talking about the director's cut. I love how you get this downward spiral with Laurie Strode and how she loses her sanity over the events of the first movie, and she is becoming like Michael. Even though she's not a killer, she's becoming so deranged and so messed up. And I think Scout Taylor Compton has an incredible performance, honestly, in this movie, and I think it blows me away. But this movie also suffers from stupid redneck dialogue again, but the brutality is great. Scout Taylor Compton is a shining star in this movie. She's just incredible. I love her in this movie. But this suffers the same as the last one. But I put this one over the first Rob Zombie's Halloween because of Scout Taylor Compton and Laurie Strode's, like, PTSD, like, descending down the spiral. It blows me away every time I watch it. I love every scene with her. I love everything about it. But it's got stupid things like the last one. So that's why it's my number 20. And my 19 is Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. This one isn't as good as the first three, but I think that this one is a solid sequel. I think that even though it's got dumb things about it, like Freddy comes back to life by a dog pissing on him, pissing on his grave where he died in the last movie. Like, stuff like that is stupid, and killing off all the characters from the last one. But the thing I like about this one, and it's a Renny Harlin movie, I like how visually pleasing it is. I like the kills. I liked how even though they killed off every character from the last one, they didn't do it in the first, like, 10 minutes like Halloween Resurrection. They did it to where it took half the movie for them all to die, and you got enough of them before they died. It's not like you got, like, Jamie Lee Curtis in Resurrection where she's in it for 15 minutes and dies. It takes, like, half the movie for all these characters to die as opposed to just dying immediately, and I think that they gave them respect before they died. So it's a cop-out in a weird way, but I enjoy Part 4 for what it is. I think it's a fun, enjoyable sequel, one of the better sequels in the franchise. Now my number 18 is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Now this one, after the first 6, which I love, this one is one where it's starting to go down that downward spiral of, like, it's getting stale. Like Nightmare 5 was, like, getting stale. Tina, I really enjoy. I love the idea of having a Carrie versus Jason thing, because they were going to do Freddy versus Jason right now in 1988, but they didn't have the rights to Freddy, so they just did a Jason versus Carrie type of thing, where this Tina girl is telekinesis, and it's great with her in the final fight with Jason, but the characters are stupid and annoying and boring. Everybody except for Tina is just bland, and as opposed to the first 6 movies. So this suffers from being way more bland and losing its edge as opposed to the first 6 movies. So this one it's good, but it's not incredible or great like the other ones. So I enjoyed it for what it is, but this one is not as great. Now, this is where it gets, for me, in terms of entertainment, all 5-star movies. I love all these movies. Now, my number 16 is Freddy vs. Jason. Freddy vs. Jason is one of those movies where, again, people love it or hate it. I love this movie. I love how insanely fun this movie is, how the popcorn type of popcorn movie it is. Just, even if you complain about things about it, of course I'm going to understand, but I think that this is just incredibly fun, incredibly enjoyable. Like the characters a lot. Love Freddy and Jason fighting against each other. I thought that was really fun. The effects are silly, over the top fun. The CG is silly nowadays, but it's still incredibly entertaining. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just a really, really fun overall just clash between these two horror villains. And my number 15 is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. This one is a fantastic sequel, and I feel like people always put it in their top 5, or maybe even put it as first. Sometimes people put it over the first one. I'm not going to do that for this one, but I do enjoy this one a lot. This is a great sequel. I love the fact that Nancy comes back. I love the fact that Patricia Arquette, who did a great performance in her first movie, is great in this movie, and I love how all these characters are interesting and fun, and they're all different from each other. The kills are great. Them fighting back against Freddy in their dreams is great. I really love that. I really think that's awesome. So I really enjoy this movie overall. I think it's a really solid, really great sequel. Now my number 15, if I didn't say that, because I'm getting off on the numbers, but it's okay. I'm not perfect. So let's talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street. My number 15, the original Nightmare on Elm Street is a classic in every way, shape, or form. I don't know what else I can say about it besides it's a classic. I love it. But it's not my number 1, funny enough. My number 14 is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This Freddy is terrifying. This is scarier than the first one. I love Freddy in this one. I love the characters in this one. I think this is such a fun sequel. Such a fun and entertaining sequel. So that's my number 14. And my number 13 is New Nightmare. New Nightmare is my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie because it has, I feel like it's the scariest, I feel like it's the most interesting, I stay through it throughout. The first one I think is not as interesting throughout. I really dug the hell out of this one. I think New Nightmare is great. And then my number 13 is Friday the 13th, the original, 1980. This one I think is great with Alice and with Mrs. Voorhees. Betsy Palmer has a great performance. The kills are good. It's just slower than the other ones, but it's still a fantastic movie. It's a great build-up. Great whodunit movie. I really enjoyed this one. Number 12 is Friday the 13th Part 2. I like this more than the first one because I think they just did what they had in the first one and made it better. Jason is creepy in this movie, even though he's just got the sack head instead of the mask. I think he's still effective, still really great. Ginny is a great final girl. Love Ginny. I think this is a great sequel. I think the kills are great. Everything about it I think is awesome. And then my number 11 is Friday the 13th, the final chapter. People would say this is the best one, and I completely agree why. This isn't my favorite, but it's still one of the best. One of the coolest ways to kill Jason. Some of the most fun, engaging characters overall. I really enjoy this one. My number 10 is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Now, Jason Lives is just so incredibly fun, funny. Tom McLaughlin did a great job of making this a meta movie where it got inspiration for Scream and even New Nightmare, where Wes Craven saw this and thought, well, I can use this type of meta humor in my movies, and it works incredibly well because I love Scream, the first two. So I think that Tom McLaughlin did a great job with this one. The kills are great, the characters are fun and interesting. Tommy is great. Thom Matthews is great as Tommy. And I really just enjoyed this one, and it's one of my favorites. My number 9 is Halloween H2O, 20 years later. Now, this is one where people get really pissy about because I understand everything. I understand why people don't like Michael Myers' mask, why he's not intimidating. I think Chris Strand is fine. Love Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in this movie. I think it's great. I think she's really engaging, really moving. And then the teenager characters are totally fine, but this is just really a moving movie with her performance and with her, even though Resurrection fucking exists, that ending, you can't take away her cutting his head off. I don't care if they said, oh, it's not the same guy in Resurrection. Fuck that shit. That's so stupid. But this had a complete arc for Laurie Strode. If you watch 1, 2, and H2O, this is her complete arc with her versus her brother Michael in this iteration. So it's just, the ending is incredible. I think it's one of the best horror endings ever because I think it just is truly just how you can do the thing that can't be done. Kill the villain, even though of course he comes back in the next one. I don't care, but I still think this is incredible for a lot of ways. There's a lot of things I kind of don't like, but I think that despite that, the things that are great are incredibly great. So I love Halloween H2O. My number 8 is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This one is just underrated as can be, and I know it's getting love now everywhere now because people got over the fact that it's not Michael Myers, that they wanted to be different and unique and do something different, do anthology movies after this. But of course, This one failed at the box office, of course it did, so now we get all these Michael Myers movies, which I enjoy, but I would have loved to see an anthology series with other Halloween-based films. And I really loved all the characters. I thought they were great. I thought the kills were great. I thought the cinematography, Gene Cundy cinematography, like the first two, was great. Really great sense of dread in this movie. Really great humor, great characters, great kills. Love Part 3, underrated as can be. My number 7 would be Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Now this one took me a while to really love, but I truly do think this is one of the best Halloween sequels. I think that everything about it, I think Jamie is great having this movie about Michael trying to kill a little girl, his 7 or 8 year old niece, whatever the age is. They say the wrong ages in both movies, but in 4 and 5. But I love how he's chasing after this little girl trying to kill her. And Rachel is a great final girl. She has a great arc. She's a great horror final girl character in this movie, not in 5, because 5 they fuck her up like they did Jamie Lee Curtis and make her die in a stupid way and not even think about anything, but not be a smart character. So in this one, she's a smart, great final heroine, and I love her in this movie. I love the kills, love the characters, love the cinematography. It's creepy, it's great. Really love Halloween 4, one of my favorites. And then my number 5 is Friday the 13th Part 3. Now, Part 3 is really one of those horror movies where it's one of the first ones I watched. One of the first Friday movies I watched, one of the first horror movies I watched. I loved everything about this movie. I think that it really does, it has the typical Friday formula like the other ones, but I think that in this one, I think the final act is truly terrifying. I think that Jason running in this movie, for some reason, watching it as a young age, I think made it scare me. But I think Jason in this movie is so scary. I like how it looks. I like these cabins that they're in. I feel like out of all the movies, these are the creepiest looking cabins where they're in, because the places that Chris hides in and tries to escape from Jason, and Jason goes in and tries to kill her, I think is great. Whenever she's hiding in the closet and she sees through the door, the keyhole in the door, and he starts chasing after her from there and he sees her in there, I think is great. I think that the moments of him chasing her whenever she gets in the van, tries to drive away, there's no gas in the car, she gets stuck on the bridge, she gets out, you see in the background him getting up, running as fast as he can at her, and I think that is actually really scary. I think this is the scariest Jason in all the movies. I think he is really terrifying, and I love him in this movie. I think that Chris is a great final girl. I think these characters are all fun and all interesting, and I feel like the first 6 just do a great job of this, but I feel like this is one of the best ones. And it's because of nostalgia. This is one of the scariest ones because I watched it at a young age. I think it's one of the first ones I watched, but not the first, because my number 4, here we go with the controversy. Let me have it. Let me have the controversy. I want to talk about my number 4, which is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. I love this movie. I don't know what it is. This is just, it is the most watchable Friday movie. It is the most fun, the most interesting. I think it's got almost the most kills. It's either this or Jason X, I think, that have the most kills. Jason X might have topped it by a couple, but this has some of the best kills in the movie. Even though they're neutered, this has some good kills. I love these characters. I love how interesting they are. I love how Tommy, this is the second film with Tommy, final chapter, and then New Beginning, and then Jason Lives. It's the 3 Tommy movies with 3 different actors. And I think that Tommy in this movie is really great. I love how he's got this arc where he is he's disturbed after the final chapter where he kills Jason, he kills him off. And then halfway through in this trilogy of Tommy movies, he is mentally insane, kind of in a way, where he has killed Jason, but he is scared for his well-being. And then there's a killer going around killing after Jason has died. Who might it be? It might be Tommy. And they do a great job of doing all these red herrings, like the first movie, where it's a whodunit again, because Jason is dead after the 4th movie. And even though he comes back in 6, he is dead in this movie. He is gone. And I love how badass Roy is as a killer. He is terrifying in a lot of ways. He's a great killer. He's underrated. People need to quit bitching about that it's not Jason. It's just like Halloween 3, where it's not about Michael Myers or it's not a slasher. Get over yourself. Like, just watch these movies and look at them from a fun factor. And I know people aren't going to always all think what I think. I think this is just, for me, this is a perfect, insane, silly, fun movie. And I love everything about it. I love it. It's so infinitely rewatchable. All the characters are fun and interesting, even though they get killed off so quickly. Because they said on the commentary, like, every 7 or 8 minutes, there's got to be a kill or a jump scare. They can't do any more. They've got to make it. They've got to keep churning them out. And this was just an incredibly fun exploitation horror. Like, this and it's from a porn director, which is Danny Steinman, which is great. Like, I just love the sleazy look to it too. It's got a different look to it, and I usually don't like that porn looking cinematography where it looks like that, but I think this does it great. So I love the hell out of this movie. I think this is great. Just incredibly entertaining. That's why it's my favorite Friday movie on this list, because it's just so infinitely rewatchable for me. And my number 3 is Rick Rosenthal's Halloween 2. Now, Halloween 2, for me, before I watched Halloween 2018, I feel like 2 had... I think it's still over. Halloween 2018 has better cinematography in a way, because Halloween 2, since it is in 1981, it's set right after the first movie, but it's made 3 years later, I feel like has just a great amount of Dean Cundy cinematography to look just like the original one. I think that being set in a hospital is really scary. I think the only negatives with this movie for me is that there's not enough Laurie and Loomis, but despite that, these characters that are cannon fodder to be killed are Friday the 13th style characters, but they are fun and engaging and so interesting. Like, Bud is so hilarious. I like all these nurses. I think they're all fun, and they all have their basic cliche things, but their performances are great, and I like all these people. I think they're all fun characters to be killed off. And even though there's not enough Laurie and Loomis, I think that the replacement characters are great. And I think the final act with Laurie is like the first one again, but I think it's great and scary being in the hospital. Like, I think there's more places for her to run around and him to hide in. I think that's scary as the first one in a lot of ways. Even though the first one is the first one, it's the best one. But the first one has such such incredible scares, and this one, like, it's got such incredible creepy moments too, where, like, when Michael's walking down the stairs when he's chasing Laurie, that is one of the scariest shots in the whole franchise, where he's just walking slowly down the stairs. And I like how slowly he is walking, like he's taunting her, he's scaring her, because she has got a broken ankle. She is trying to run away fast, but she can't run quick, and he's chasing her slowly, like prey, like against her. I think that's great. I think that this is overall one of my favorite horror sequels, even though it has the brother-sister thing, which John Carpenter and Deborah Hill made that decision and were drunk making this script. So it's like they did an Empire Strikes Back thing, like, oh, they're brother and sister. So that completely set the foundation for the rest of the sequels until 2018. And I'm fine with the brother-sister thing. It doesn't bother me because it's not... It honestly feels like it doesn't matter. Even in the new one, it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't feel like it affects anything, really. So I'm fine with the brother and sister thing. But I love this sequel. Such a great sequel, such fun characters, such great kills, even though it's an 80s slasher, not like the original. It's totally fine because it's so fun and so entertaining. And the new one did kills too that were modern kills. So it's not like you can't just do the first one again, and you can't. You couldn't do it in 1981, you couldn't do it in 2018, make it bloodless as it is in the original. So Halloween 2 is 1981 is my number 3. Now my number 2, this is a big-ass surprise, is Halloween 2018. People are loving or hating this movie. This movie has so much controversy. Again, every goddamn movie that is a blockbuster movie is getting so much controversy now. Star Wars The Last Jedi, I cannot believe how much shit is getting for that movie, and I'm just flabbergasted. And then this one, I hope that people are not going to go and just act like this is one of the worst movies ever again, like they did for that one. Every blockbuster, it's going to get worse, I feel like. I've noticed that recently. God, I hate that, but I love this movie. I think this is great. Jamie Lee Curtis perfects what she did in H2O. She was great in H2O, she perfects it in this one. Michael, James Jude Courtney, is terrifying in this movie. Probably the best after Nick Castle or everybody else who played Michael in the first one, because a lot of people played him. But Nick Castle is, like, he's just as, like, James Jude Courtney is just as good as Nick Castle in this movie. I think he's terrifying. He doesn't have, like, the disappearing and appearing as much. He does it a couple times in this movie, but he still is really incredible, James Jude Courtney. Like, he gives everybody else a run for their money, even though I love, like, George P. Wilbur. He's great, too. But it really does do... I love how this movie is so akin to the first one, and it is a sequel to the first one, ignoring all the other sequels. And like Halloween 2, it has a lot of things that are very close to it, and in a way that respects it, and just gives it a cool... It is a cool second movie, even though it's another timeline. But I love Jamie Lee Curtis in this. Sorry, I'm getting all congested. My nose. I'm getting all... I don't know why. But I love Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie. I think she's great. I think all these side characters are all... Like, they're not awful, but they're good. They're good. They're okay. They're not very... They're not super great. There's some better side characters in the other movies, but I feel like the best things in this movie overtake that. How this movie looks, the kills are fantastic. Jamie Lee Curtis is fantastic. James Jude Courtney is fantastic. I really like Karen. I really like Allison. I thought they were great characters. I thought that overall this is a great sequel that ignores all of them, but for good reason, because it tries to be like the first one in so many ways, and like Halloween 2, this one I think is fantastic, and I love this sequel, and it's getting so much shit right now, but I'm going to say what I want to say. I love this movie, so that's my number 2. And my number 1, what else can I say? Halloween 1978. I can't say anything different about this movie that everybody hasn't said, so it's more fun talking about the other movies on this list, so it's obviously my number 1, and I said it at the beginning because people are going to expect that. If you know how big of a fan I am in the Halloween franchise or the Friday franchise, you would have expected one of those to be number 1. So that's my list, and I love talking about this because I love that idea that everybody on ScreamStream did, and I respect them so much. I wanted to just talk about my ranking, and I think that they did a cool thing, and I think that's really fun to do 31 of these movies on the 31st. I'm glad they thought of that. That's so cool. So that was my response to their awesome channels. Go check all of them out. Cody Leach, Drum Dums, Mother Mayhem, Brian Lomax, and Will I Like It Reviews. Like, go check all of them out. They're all great. So thank you guys so much for watching if you watch this. What do you think? What are your rankings? Make a video. Or just rank them down below. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want. Thanks so much for watching.